Hello there, I'm Mrs. Wheeler. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dolphin class teacher and I work on a Thursday and Friday. I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about phonics and spelling, what that looks like at Stanford, and I'll talk to you and discuss a little bit about how that is taught and learned within reception year 1 and year 2, but also give you a bit of an overview as well about how the whole school would embed that within all the aspects of the curriculum. I've prepared some slides and things to talk alongside, so you've got something to refer to and see too, and I hope you find it helpful. So one of the key things really I'm going to start by saying is that phonics is everywhere. We do teach it discreetly and systematically every day, so each class would generally have a phonics lesson for at least 15-20 minutes, could be a little bit more depending upon the year group that they're in. But also phonics is really within part of our guided reading sessions as well, so every day, whether it be with the teacher, the TA, or independently, there are activities and chances and opportunities for them to use and apply their phonics throughout. The morning starters that we have as well every day quite often would have and involve the games and maybe some tricky word sentences and things for them to just revisit or practice some of those aspects of phonics and spelling. Some of the specific areas of phonics and spelling are also taught within the English curriculum, so that would focus again at varied times throughout the year, and very importantly, to ensure clear progression, that actually phonics is taught within phases so that your child can then move through these at their own pace. Although I'll be talking to you about what's covered within each year group, obviously each child learns at a different pace and has their own readiness to learn, so it's really important that obviously each of those phases are not rushed. You will, of course, be very familiar with all sorts of jolly phonics play, and for those of you possibly with some year 2 children maybe, spelling play as well. Especially in times of obviously when we've had lockdown and things, they're a great resource to be able to have and refer to and use, and we use them all the time as part of our direct teaching of phonics. Within reception, it's really solely to start with the introduction of jolly phonics, so making sure that we individually teach the single phoneme sounds, that they are taught in a specific order, because the sounds that can be put together to make a number of new and different words relatively quickly, and as you'll see, that obviously when we refer back to some of those early individual sounds, you can make lots of different words. We quite often call them CVC words, and soon the children see themselves as early readers really quickly. So the single sounds are all very much part of the phase 2 part of learning. We know that they have a daily session where they would have a song and an action to introduce that phoneme. It's a really helpful hook for children to recognise the grapheme, so the letter symbol and the phoneme that it makes. So within each of those phonics sessions, the children can have a chance to listen, make, explore, talk about the sounds as well, because that really embeds and is the foundation for all aspects of the phonics that obviously we're teaching at school here. As well as the phonemes, there are also phase 2 and phase 3 tricky words that are taught, and I'll show you those in a minute. And by the end of reception, it could also well be that obviously there are phase 4 tricky words that they've been introduced as well in the summer term. Now, alongside the single letter sounds, once the initial phonemes, single phonemes have been taught, we then obviously then encourage the children to put those two sounds together to make a new one. So phase 3 is all about introducing the idea of a digraph. And we obviously do the same again, where there are lots of different digraph sounds. Each one has a song from the Jolly Phonics system, and then it's that helpful hook to be able to recognise the action as much as the grapheme that they can see on the page. So as a quick glance, you can see obviously sort of through the phases that reception will be introducing a large number of the tricky words, and that will be again through their phonics within their guided reading sessions and things. And it's really just a chance for them to be familiarised with them and get to see them, so their sight vocabulary is really improving and building upon and getting bigger and growing throughout their time when they're taking reading books home or they're reading with you when they've got their own books. When we start with year one, we obviously then revisit and spend time recapping lots of those phonemes. And again, because of the year that we've had and all sorts, we have actually made particular times and differences to our phonics this year in particular, where we have been able to really go over a little bit slower on some of those year reception ones in year one. So the phase 2, phase 3 sounds and the tricky words, they're pretty much always part of our warm-ups anyway at the start of each session. But like I say, we have spent longer on it this time. So after that, we've done a recap, we've warmed up, the children are familiar with that. We then move on to phase 4. So we focus upon blending and segmenting words with adjacent consonants. So we introduce that terminology and the vocabulary to the children so they understand about what they are learning using the correct vocabulary. And obviously once they are familiar with that and they've had that practice in that, they're able to then obviously begin a little bit more to read slightly longer words and have that skill in practicing and stretching out the sound for each and every single time. So moving through year 1, year 5 is really meaty, so it's split up and broken into different sections. So within that phase, which is a large part of the year 1, we have split digraphs that we spend a few weeks on, and again we will revisit that through our potentially look, cover, write check sheets and things that we practice and do within our handwriting times, or maybe in addition to also the phonics teaching that we do. So split digraphs are really key and important, and again it's a skill in itself for children to be able to recognise and see which ones they are. They've just made that leap and that jump from obviously recognising 2 letter sounds together, making one new sound as a digraph, but now we're saying that we split them. So again, the natural progression, once they've grasped that, is to then recognise and play with words and see and spot different split digraphs within words. Another part of that phase 5 is alternative pronunciations. So being able to recognise that perhaps the EA sound can make an E in cream, but actually if it's putting another word, then it can say if it's in head. And obviously the English language is really very complex, and it needs sometimes lots of time to be really clear and explicit in being able to practice that. The other part of phase 5 though is the alternative spellings, so looking specifically at patterns, rules and best guesses. I know then, although we're coming out of year 1 by then, we do touch upon that phase 6 where we are looking at spelling rules and conventions. So phase 6 reinforces very much part of all that learning from phase 5, but hones in a little bit more closely at the spelling rules and conventions. So we in year 1 would particularly be focusing upon ing at the end and ed for that past tense. In addition to all of the sounds and the phonemes and things that we've been introducing and teaching the children through that year, we have common exception words as well. So there are 45, and lots of you I know would have been very familiar with them. You would have seen through our websites or perhaps at parents' evenings us talking to you about them. But these are the words that don't follow that normal phonetic spelling rule that we've been teaching the children to do, or the blending and segmenting that we encourage them and want them to do. These words are very much different in lots of ways. So we teach them in a variety of different ways within the phonics teaching session itself, but they are very much integral to the daily book browse and handwriting sessions that we do. So as I was just saying about like the look, cover and write check practice that they do. The children are taught to be able to read and spell those words within their own independent writing. So it's not just being able to recognise them in isolation as flashcards, although that's a really good start. It's actually being able to be fluent enough and confident enough to be able to apply that within their own reading and writing too. So this is a list of the year 1 common exception words, and if you do have a chance to look through and see close enough that several of those words, there are lots of the words from phase 2, phase 3, and possibly even phase 4 there as well. So it's building again upon what's been taught from reception. There may be a few additions, a few new and different ones, but again, it's just building it the whole time. In terms of the spelling play and what happens in year 2, once the children reach phase 6, we move away from blending and segmenting. We focus more upon the other aspects of reading that's needed to become that confident, independent reader that obviously we want every child to be before they leave Stanford, and to be a lifelong reader. So it's really important developing other skills in addition to what we've been teaching early on. And obviously part of that would include things like using and applying their inference and skill of deduction, finding out pieces of information that obviously perhaps is not been told or explicitly shared through the words, but actually what's not been said. So within year 2, we continue where they are in their phonics, as well as teaching discrete spelling lessons. So phase 6 reinforces much learning from phase 5, like I've said, and it looks closely at spelling rules and conventions. So by adding prefixes like un or dis, so understanding how those words can change when you add them, as much as practicing how to spell them. And obviously likewise, like we did with year 1, we carry on with the suffixes. So we have ing and ed, but also others too. So this is embedded within other parts of the curriculum and during the daily handwriting sessions, similarly to year 1. In addition to the year 1 common exception words, year 2 have their own set again, but I'll show you in a moment, and obviously you will see where you will see it builds again from the reception words, those phases 2, 3, 4 and 5 into year 1, and again it builds up again from year 1 into year 2. That's why obviously it's accumulating and there are more words for each year group really. So they are taught in a variety of different ways. They're integral to the weekly reading workshop sessions, again, whether that be through any teacher, TA or independent learning activity, and the children are taught to be able to read and spell them within their own independent learning. So whether that be their reading and their writing in context. So that was a real whistle-stop tour. I hope you found that helpful, and if there's any other information, then obviously I'll be happy to assist or answer any questions at a later point, and thank you.